Hello, everybody. My topic is leading through crisis, and this is sort of a merging of my two worlds. So, of course, I'm fascinated with the concept of crisis and emergencies because who doesn't love the adrenaline? You have to kind of like it if you're in this sort of business. But I'm also merging the world of organizational systems and consulting and trying to find a way to help develop people as leaders within the crisis professions or in contexts where they may encounter crisis. And so that's what this is oriented towards. This is what we're going to be going through today, talking about the context for crisis leadership, what are some of the cultural views around it, what's the science behind it, and the most important part of it, the meat of this, is how you cultivate yourself as a crisis leader and some practices that you can incorporate into your own life and ways that you can leverage influence so that you can be a more effective crisis leader. So, context of crisis management. This is 1906 San Francisco, a devastating earthquake, catastrophic in those times. We look at it as, well, it was a 7.8 magnitude. We're looking at the 9.0 exercise coming up, so I'm sure some people are going 7.8, but if you think about it, for that time and that place, that was bad. They had over 400,000 people living in San Francisco at the time. 3,000 people died. 200,000 people were left homeless. And so this is part of the mass migration as people are trying to find a place to be. They have no home. 80% of the city was destroyed. This is the context of crisis. Now, in that context, I've had the fortune to study with Dr. Ian Mitroff, who some regard as the founding father of crisis management. And he's got a couple of things that he says that I think are rather provocative statements. He says, major crisis results when there is a serious breakdown or malfunction between people, organizations, and technologies. There are no natural disasters. They are all human-caused. There are hazards. And the reason he says this is because there may be hazards out there, but if you built properly for them, we would not have disasters result from them. We have a built environment that does not adapt in 1906 to a San Francisco earthquake in 1906. That was devastating, but it was because of the way we built there. In crisis management, Ian Mitroff says there are many things that are part of that whole cycle, but he says there's one that's the most neglected, and that is signal detection. And we're going to work on some things today, some practices that you can increase your ability to detect the signals of crisis before it happens, and ways that you can become more resilient as a result of that. Because he says no crisis ever happens in isolation. Every crisis is part of a chain reaction. You have to look at the process that's present in the organization. Now, in organizational systems, it's complex. It's more than just the sum of its parts. You can't just say, oh, it's just a collection of people, any more than you can say a pile of car parts is the same thing as a car. There are these relationships between them. They have to work together. So it's more than just the parts. It's complex, it's interconnected, it's emergent. There's this adaptive property to systems, and organizations are no exception. With signal detection, that neglected part of crisis management, you have to have a learning organization environment in order to process the signals that you're receiving. And that's from Peter Senge. Peter Senge, in the fifth discipline, talks about the nature of a learning organization is one which actively seeks out problems to be found, not to be judged, not to be punished, but problems to be found so that they can be learned from. And so there's not a penalty for detecting or for reporting a problem. Unfortunately, that's not the case in most of our organizations. People don't want to hear the truth. I also studied with Dr. Mark Jones. He was at NASA during the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, the O-ring failure. And he said that the psychology and the culture of that organization at that time was failure is not an option. That was their motto. Failure is not an option. If you have an environment where failure is not an option, you have no room for somebody to come forth and say, there's a problem. Because if they do, they'll be punished. So he said that directly you could blame organizational culture takes the blame. for that disaster. So this is why we need good crisis leadership, because we need people at the helm, people in the rank and file who are working together in a learning organization environment who are helping us to prevent disasters from happening in the first place. The whole point is to create a healthy environment that first of all prevents crisis, but then also helps people overcome some of our biological, psychological challenges that we have as part of us in crisis and that are barriers to our performance. And then also those crisis leaders need to help keep hope alive. We need to be able to inspire people to persist and to be able to generate the momentum that is necessary and focused in recovery.